Good afternoon, everyone. We have the pre-holiday office hours with my mentor, Blaine Bartlett. Learn.blainebartlett.com/LMM. That's for the mindset mastermind genius that he gives us. Welcome, Blaine. What's going on?
Hey, it's cold here in the Pacific Northwest. I was literally just outside thawing a pipe out.
It was so funny. I have long sleeves on, and I went outside to take the trash out, and I'm like, "Wow, it's really warm here." And yet, the rest of the country, like I always say, they're so worried about the California taxes until they start realizing that it's just a weather tax, and
That's all
it's
it is.
well worth it. Let me just tell you that. Well, speaking of great weather, we have someone that knows how to take care of a lawn in great weather, and the editor in chief of LawnStarter. Welcome, Jeff Herman, to Office Hours.
Glad to be here.
Great to have you. Well, the gig economy has really taken hold of every institution that we have, and being able to have instant access to the best in a global economy. But it's so interesting. I never thought that it would hit down to one of the oldest professions. We don't have paper boys anymore. So I think the next best thing would be our landscaper, and being able to have all of our lawn services at a touch of the button is amazing. And how long has LawnStarter provided this kind of instant gratification when it comes to experience dealing with grass, weeds, and pests, etc.?
LawnStarter started in 2013, so we've been doing this for a while. And it all started with the idea of, if you can order your ride on the phone and you can get food delivered at home, you ought to be able to find a way to get a lawn care pro to your front door too. And it's just, there's such a $110 billion market for this. So it's a huge segment, and no one is getting the pros under one umbrella. So that's what we're trying to do, is to get all of these people, lawn care, landscapers, everything outdoor services, so that you can have one place, one marketplace for all the pros.
$110 billion market.
It's huge. It's huge. I just want to double check. I will have to double check whether it's million or billion, but I think it's million. So let me just double check on that. Okay. But it's a huge market, and there's just no one big player for all of this.
Had I known that when I was 10 years old mowing lawns for $3 a lawn, I would have stayed in it.
Right. And the neat thing is that, these are small businesses that we're helping by giving them a little bit more technology so that they can find more jobs right near them. So they don't spend as much money on gas. They don't spend as much money on window time. So they get more jobs to make more money, and it all helps them to succeed.
And you're utilizing your experience with content. You're a New York Times guy, creditcards.com, most recently allaboutvision.com, and now you're all about lawn care, which, by the way, you have in common with Blaine, because your family was involved. Your uncle owned the biggest sod business in St. Louis, so you're not a stranger to lawn care. But I'm most interested, being someone who understands building a community with content, and you are an expert at quality content. And quality content now, I believe the riches are in the niches, where New York Times had a report on everything. Dr. Pimple Popper only reports on popping pimples, and Jeff Herman only reports on lawn care. But because it has a size, scope, and scale that's never been seen before, the quality content is the most valuable asset that a company of like yours can have to build that community. What are some of the aspects that you're using from your truly illustrious career in content to attract more service providers and more customers?
For more customers, we try and make sure that we've got all the information that you need to be able to do the job yourself. And then if you don't want to do it, well, we can do it for you. So we give you all the information, do it yourself, and then hook you at the bottom. Oh, this is too much trouble, we'll do it for you. So, and to get more pros into the pipeline, it's to help them to succeed as business people. So, the tax ramifications and how to fill out your taxes, what's deductible, what's not, all that sort of thing. And just when gas prices were at a record earlier this year, to be able to tell the story of the pros, because it's a 1-2 punch. They're paying to handle the equipment, to get it there by the truck, And at the same time, they also have to power the equipment because most equipment is still gas powered. So it's a 1-2 punch, telling their stories, helping them find ways to get around, whether it's gas buddy or, in some cases, they just try and group more jobs in the same area so they don't spend as much money on their gas.
How do you vet your providers? Because there's a very low barrier to entry. I'm assuming here, but if I'm going to contract somebody, the pest area is interesting. We've got some real interesting invasive plants up here in the Northwest that my lawn doesn't look anywhere like it used to when I first put it in, and I've had difficulty finding somebody that can actually address the issue that I've got. I've got people that can tell me what it is, but in terms of addressing it, that's another question entirely.
We have a LawnStarter University for our pros to help them get better at what they do, and so they have the knowledge that they need to succeed. And then to vet them, we also make sure their background checks. We require background checks because if you're having somebody in your home and in your yard, you want to make sure that they're not anyone who's going to be doing any harm to your family, house, kids, pets, all that sort of thing. So background checks are really important, and you want to make sure that they're positioned to succeed and that they are basically following a playbook for business success.
One of the other areas I am blessed to coach many different businesses, and one of the bigger success stories I have was a young man who started a lawn care service, and I coached him on knocking on doors and having credibility and emotional attachment. And he started with one truck and equipment to do lawns, and he has built quite an empire. But one of the ways that we've tripled his revenue was that because he was already at the home, we created a pull service and just put a couple of hooks on the side of the truck, and it wasn't a huge stretch to learn about pool care. And then he realized that he owned the customer in their home, and he created channel partnerships for solar and for a variety of security systems and other handyman. And he's become the hub of that by building that relationship through lawn care. Is that something that you empower these the lawn care service people with, is different ideas to build different streams of revenue?
Absolutely. And you also are just revealing our playbook for what LawnStarter is in the position of doing right now too. So we're going from lawn care to pest control to fencing to roofing to everything else that's outdoor services. But in the meantime, if you have a pro and you're in an area where there's snow, well, your pro can also mow your grass and also plow your driveway. So that's one. But as you said,
thaw out pipes? Can it thaw out pipes?
Probably if they have a heater, absolutely. But they also trim trees. They also do everything that, it depends on whether your pro has all of those skills. But if they do, this is your entry to all of the things that you can do for that customer.
Beautiful. That's amazing. Blaine?
Well, yeah, just a quick question here, just in terms of your market specifics, in terms of pricing, that sort of thing. I've got a hunch, just an assumption, that the pricing structure would vary widely depending on where we're at in the country. Does your service provide on both sides, the consumer-facing side, an idea about what I should realistically want to charge or pay, and on the other side, for the vendor, realistically what I should be charging?
What we do is we basically look at the real estate aerial shots of your land, and that's how the pricing is done. So we know what the square footage is, and we know what that job should take. Now, if you've got long grass, there's an extra fee if it's 6 to 12 inches, so it's a little bit more. And then we also price in that we do a minimum of 3 mows at your lawn. So you can't just get 1 mow and be done and come back and want service 6 months from now. So, 3 mows minimum. And at the same time, we want to make sure that we've got the right pricing for your land and your property so that we get the right scheme there.
Interesting.
And in, cleaning services, one of the difficulties they have are with their network of people. The people then create side deals with the customer, and LawnStarter loses the customer and they go direct to the service provider. Are there certain mechanisms that you utilize in order to sustain the relationship with LawnStarter, not necessarily the lawn care professional?
The really cool thing is staying in touch with the pros, which makes my day. So, I send them things, the 2 or 3 that I have on speed dial. That helps keep those 3 in our pocket. But at the same time, you try and do that for everybody else that you can. And it's communications from the CEO, Steve. It's communications letting them know that we're trying to help them succeed. That LawnStarter University helps keep them because it's helping them to be more successful in what they're doing. It's just always trying to make those touch points with the pros who are actually out in the field. And the really cool thing this past year is we had a bunch of people from the office all over actually riding along with the pros. And that helps us to see how it's done. And it also helps them to realize that, we really care.
Smart.
That's smart. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Blaine,
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm going to go back to the content side and building a community because a two-sided marketplace is much more difficult than the one-sided marketplace. And you have, obviously multiple offerings that you're going to be moving forward to. And I love the approach of education, free education that gets them into the community. What about the viral nature of word of mouth? What mechanisms, modalities, methodologies are you using? Because word of mouth has always been a big part of this business. And if you can capture that correspondence as well via the content, I imagine that it is probably the cheapest or least expensive way to market.
Have you seen our study stories? Because we do study stories at least twice a week on 2 different sites. And those are really, we've honed them down to a science. And they get lots of media links. They get a lot of media buzz. And that winds up getting us that attention for basically little cost. If we had to pay for all of this and then get all of that media attention from the New York Times for the best cities for hiking, those sorts of things, we just couldn't afford it. But when you do it organically and wind up getting the attention of the media people, that helps to get your name out there for LawnStarter as a business that does all sorts of outdoor services. But it's the craziest thing because who would have thought that Lawn Love, which is our sister site, our most fearsome competitor that we bought a year ago, well, Lawn Love had the best cities to survive a zombie apocalypse. Kind of a big distance from lawn care, but it gets a lot of attention. So you wind up doing these study stories, and as long as you have all of the data from all of the right sources, and you have it so that it's telling a compelling data story, it gets a lot of attention. Small media, big media, it gets your name out there, it gets that brand recognition, and it's just the most fun part of my job is talking about what we do.
That's obvious. Yeah, it really is. I mean, you're quite facile with this. I love the story. Quick final question here. Just in terms of branding, is it a white label process, or if I was to sign on, would I now become LawnStarter Inc. or LawnStarter LCC or LLC?
No, you would just be a pro for LawnStarter. And again, since we acquired Lawn Love, sort of like Uber and Lyft, but they're on one company. So you can be a pro for LawnStarter, you can be a pro for Lawn Love. And at the same time, you get more jobs that way because you've got the combined pool of all of those jobs and all of those pros.
Very smart. And the experience at New York Times certainly doesn't help, I'm sure, relationship capital wise as well. And the extensive situational knowledge. What I really enjoy about speaking with you, Jeff, is that as someone who's a little bit older in the space as well, it's always great to see someone who can be appreciated for the traditional situational experience that we all 3 of us at least have, and making and applying it to the technologies that exist in the communities that exist today. And I think it's a huge advantage that a lot of people our age don't necessarily take advantage of. They feel inferior or separate from or resistant to, because of what should be an asset, they see it as a liability. So thank you for inspiring many of us a little bit more seasoned entrepreneurs on becoming successful by grasping a hold of these types of platforms and marketplaces. Thank you. We'll have you back on for sure. We have other shows. I love the story. I love the business, and I'll be utilizing it as well. We have homes in Bloomington, Indiana, and it's always difficult for us, since we're not there, to find someone that's adequate with the credibility of LawnStarter and Lawn Love. So it's great to know you're there. Thank you.
Glad to be here. And if they don't do a good job, let me know.
You got it. I can tell you enjoy that part as well.
Yep.
Awesome. Jeff Herman, he is the incredible editor-in-chief of LawnStarter. What a big business. I love that. The riches are in the niches.
The
That's for
riches are in
sure.
the niches, and boy, you carve that place out and make it your own, and you got a business.
Yeah, not too bad, man. Buy a lawnmower and we're in a truck and we're all set, and then just start building everything else beneath it. Well, we have a lovely next guest with a beautiful name, by the way, and I hope I don't butcher it. Genevieve LeMarchal is here.
Hello.
Welcome, Genevieve.
Hi.
Hi, she's the managing partner of Suncoast Ventures and the head of healthcare ventures as well at the Expert Dojo, expertdojo.com. And we were talking about the utilization of content to attract alignment for service providers and customers. You're attracting alignment in business with venture capital. And doing so, there's certain characteristics that are applicable in your space. What are some of those characteristics that you utilize to attract the alignment in business with the right capitalization?
Yeah, well, I think to start, I specialize in global health equity and impact. And we invest at the earliest stages of a company. So we're often their first investor who is not an angel investor or maybe non-dilutive funding from like a government or something like that. We're kind of the first, professional investor who comes in. And at that stage, it's critical that not only can you help that company be successful, you can provide them access to the marketplace, help with sales, help building and growing their management team, help establishing a culture, accessing new markets. I mean, everything that these small companies need. They're like a little fledgling plant that can just be stepped on, and you want to give them every opportunity that they could possibly get. So you want to find people who are aligned with that mission, not just bringing money, while money is important, but we also want to find people who have the ability to help, but also people who really believe in health equity and impact. People who understand that we're building economies, we're building ecosystems, and we're actually changing health for millions of people. And it's so much more than just the returns. While that is extremely important and they are great, especially in venture, it's about so much more than that. And I think when you get that, what we're doing becomes that much more impactful and special and fun.
Mm-hmm.
Every day and do.
Healthcare investments or investment in any health product, whether med tech or pharma or whatever.
Yeah.
The timeline is pretty long.
It can be. Not always, though.
Not always. That's true.
So that's a good point you bring up. Health has changed so much, especially with technology growing. And I would say the health industry is one of the laggards in terms of technology adoption. And so a lot of the things that we see as commonplace, especially in business, haven't really been adopted into the healthcare industry in the same way because of the regulations and just because of how they're so ingrained in their workflow and their processes, which is fine, but presents really difficult challenges for entrepreneurs in the space. Technology and especially has accelerated in health, especially with COVID. Prior to COVID, less than 8 people or something like that had used telehealth. After COVID, over 98% of people had used telehealth. And so it was just this multiplier effect that changed the way it not only what has been an explosion of research and has created basically a new renaissance in science and technology and health that we've never had before, but it shook the system in a way that the system did need to be shaken, and it changed behaviors. And so we're seeing a lot more opportunities for some of these new technologies to be adopted. Now, the time horizon is not necessarily always longer. Mm-hmm. It might be long if you have a novel drug that's going to go to market with hundreds of millions of dollars and IPO in 10 years. Like, that's one path. But there are so many other ways that you can invest very successfully, very lucratively, and very impactfully in various aspects of health that aren't that pathway.
And as I mentioned earlier, you're so lovely, which means you don't look like or act like a typical VC coming from someone who's been in this space a long time.
Mhm.
And one of the core components of that, though, beyond the look and the act, is the relationship side of how you see venture capital. And Blaine is one of those experts in collaborative, coordinated movement for the purpose of good. And it seems that you're much aligned with building real relationships, not only with your investors, which a lot of VCs will do for alternative reasons,
Yeah.
but your founders. And what in what depth are those relationships? How do you see that differently from your perspective and what you're doing?
Well, so I think on the standpoint of investors, this just was the way I was raised. I grew up, my parents were in commercial real estate. All the family, friends, and people that I interacted with as a kid, whether we were helping someone rake leaves in their yard or having people over for a barbecue, I
Well,
didn't.
we could sign you up for lawn care. I didn't know you rake leaves. That's awesome.
That's the deal we got.
We got extra cash for you,
Yeah,
Genevieve.
I'm really good at it, but yeah, I absolutely, I didn't realize actually until just a couple years ago that these people were investors.
Mm.
There was no line. They were investors, but they were also friends. And so I jokingly refer to all my investors as friend investors. And I love the relationships I have with each one of my investors. They're all different. Some people are heavily involved in what it is that we do. Some people are less involved, but I really treasure and value those relationships. They're mentors to me. They're advisors to me personally. They are mentors to my companies, and I couldn't do it without them. And so I think you have to see your investors. They're not just money, they're partners. And so there's that. And then the other aspect is I am also an investor who operates in that way with my portfolio companies. I have 38 companies. And so it's really important for me to maintain open lines of communication, to be available, to be transparent, and be very, very real with my founders. So I look for entrepreneurs from the start who are looking for that type of relationship where it's like, we're going to get on the court together. If you want me to stoke your ego and tell you you're so great and all of that stuff, I'm not your person. But if you want somebody who's going to be in your court, be on the court with you, and like, you have an oar and I have an oar and we are rowing it together, I'm your person. And when you start to attract those types of people, what comes of it is good times, bad times, hard times, and weird times, and ultimately trust. And, I would say the relationships, I very much treasure the relationships with the founders I work with, and they translate into not just solid relationships, but they translate into deals and terms and opportunities that then I get to trickle out to the investors in the community. So it's this abundance engine that all starts with just creating value and helping each other, which seems really simple and kind of cheesy, but it's
Not at
true.
all.
Yeah.
I love simple and cheesy. That's
Simple,
good.
cheesy, and it's hard to do
Mhm.
unless it's not.
Yeah.
If you
Unless
look
it's
at
not. It's hard to do if you make it hard.
Yeah, exactly. Now, round numbers, about 50% of your, you said 38 companies, about 50% of them are women founders or underrepresented
Yep.
founders.
Yep.
What different, this goes directly to the question around a founder's ego.
Mhm.
What difference, if any, do you find in terms of ease of working with the different cohorts, the different,
Actually, I have a story. Like,
please.
just
I
as
figured there was probably one buried here.
the economy is rough right now. There's plenty of money to invest, but it's just going slow and it's a slog, especially if you're an early stage entrepreneur. This is the hardest point in your business that it will be to raise money. Once you're after Series A, it'll be easier. But one of the things that's really coming to light is there are some entrepreneurs who have been burning money and who kind of had this hubris and this ego, I don't know, about. And so 6 months ago, 8 months ago, when the market really took its first big dip, we went to these founders and we said, cut your burn rate. And we started telling them last year, raise all the money you can, like make hay while the sun shines, because it will not be good next year. And, we had, there's two camps. There's the people who have been operating lean and scrappy, doing a lot with a little, and have just been making it happen. And then there's the people who haven't been and sort of said like, well, I should be able to just raise money and this should be this. And they've got bloated expenses and all these things, and they're really struggling. And I think you see that in the news and from Silicon Valley all the time. Female founders and underrepresented founders tend to not do that. I'm making a generalization, but they tend to be more apt to bootstrap. They bootstrap longer. They're a little bit more, they're just scrappier, earlier on. And I think it's just because they often aren't getting the money thrown at them. In fact, less than 2% of venture capital dollars go to female-led companies. So, if you're a woman in this industry, you're like, I have two choices. I either make it happen with what I have, or I don't. And so when you look at where the lion's share of the funding is going, you realize women and minorities have to make it happen, and that's the best quality of an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Genevieve, that really stood out to me because it's definitely a focal point of my investment. When I learned that 73% of America is women or underrepresented people, and yet less than 3% get funded. And then when I looked at the other side of it, the success rate of women, not just as funded principals and minorities, but also as executives. So I made it a mission here over the last 3 years with my own TV shows and the funding that I do to give priority, not just because of equity and inclusion, but because of, my favorite color that we all share, which is green. Especially when I'm investing, I like a lot of green back. And so, I do see, and I just wanted to point out how important it is. People like you and Cindy Eckert, who I invest with, and Kim Perrell, that it's okay to prioritize women and underrepresented founders. It's okay to, if the tie goes to the runner, let the tie go to the underrepresented and the women, not just because of equity inclusion, which I do consider to be important, but if you want to make more money as an investor, let the tie go to the women and the underrepresented founders, because absolutely the statistics over the last 20 years are outstanding, where to put your money for those very reasons that you mentioned as well. Last thing real quick, you have a very unique mindset for a venture capitalist, and most venture capitalists that I've worked with over the last 35 years in the Silicon Valley, on Sand Hill Road, around the world, in all types of different capacities, tend to be scarce, actually even more scarce than sports agents, which are another scarce profession that I professed in. How did you get such an abundant mindset that your vocabulary, your attitude, your mindset are all more in very Zen philosophy of adding value and more than enough than not enough?
That's a really interesting question. So I would say that at first I thought that not having been minted on Sand Hill as a VC was going to be a downside for me. I never had that opportunity to sit at that, table at A16 or Sequoia and have my deals torn apart. And, I've always done things my own way. And I kind of joke, like, to get into the room, I was never invited in the front door. I've always had to climb the fire escape, find the open window, shimmy myself inside and come into the back, work my way up to the front and take a seat, And so I think that in a way, and I actually think this might be on the Suncoast website, I don't do things the way other people do them because I was never taught to do it the way other people do it. And then after a while, I started to realize, wait a minute, the way that other people are doing it doesn't work anyway. So, I started to find the best VCs I could and the best investors that I could find. And I said, teach me what you know. Don't teach me what the industry does. And, I kind of started to figure out who was one of us, and in a way, it's interesting because I feel like there's there's how VCs are now, which is what you're alluding to, David, sort of just very quantitative based and very lack mindset like, and people competing. It's like all the seagulls fighting for like the little chicken strip in the park, and you're like, why do you want that? Like, it's not even good. And
Yeah.
there's
And
so
it's weird they're all wearing Stanford sweatshirts. It's kind of odd.
Yeah, they're not venture capitalists or vulture capitalists.
Well, I just want to say, like, if the point is to buy undervalued stock and resell it and increase the value, then why that has been completely lost by the industry. And so, I believe that actually what I do is a return to true VC, which is find the diamond in the rough, work with it to get it to a point where it's a fundable deal. Come in at a great terms where you're not elbows out fighting with other investors because it happens to be hot and now you're battling FOMO. You build it up, and then now the deal's hot and other people want to get in, and that's great. And that's what we do. I'm about ready to hit 51 companies in Q1. And
well, where do we send our checks? That's my next question. Genevieve LeMarchal, she's amazing. The managing partner at Suncoast Ventures, suncoastvc.com, expertdojo.com, spending our money wisely and impacting the world at an exponential rate. We need more of you. We need more VCs like you. Keep up what you're doing. If you need any help, reach out to Blaine or I. We have other platforms. I want to show you off to more people. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Blaine.
You bet. There's a couple of people I'd like to introduce you to.
Wonderful.
In the Northwest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take it.
No wonder you can raise money. That's for sure. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Wow. Impressive.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say. Well, if we're impressed so far, this guy blew my socks off at my other show, and I had to have him on. I know he just got out of a meeting, and Dan Martell's in the house, founder, CEO of the SaaS Academy, saasacademy.com, danmartell.com. And he's publishing his first book, Blaine. He's not like you with 50 books in 50 languages, but you'll love the title of this. Blaine and I have drank more tequila and spent more time talking about time than most human beings on earth. And we can actually bend time by talking about time. But the buy back your time by itself, if that doesn't sell you in January to buy this book, as far as if you're a return on investment, a quantitative value person, I don't know what will, but you can get unstuck, reclaim your freedom, and build your empire reading this book by Dan Martell. Welcome to Office Hours, my friend.
Well, thank you.
Unmute yourself. The most common mistake on Office Hours. Probably Matt muted him. Whenever they think, there we go.
I was saying,
hey, welcome.
Good to meet you, Blaine. Yeah, the common mistake of muting. Super honored to be here. This is really exciting.
So good to have you. Well, understanding time, I'm going to start off, and Blaine helped me get to this point, by the way. So could not be on a better show than with Blaine, because Blaine and I, like I said, have shared our vision of time. But from learning from Blaine, I've realized that time is the dependent variable of all matter. It is the only dependent variable of all matter, subjective and objective. You can give me anything, any matter at all, and I can tell you how to quantify it with time, because it's the only shared collective consciousness that we had. I want to start with how time became as important to you as it is to Blaine and I.
Yeah, I mean, what happened for me, I was probably 20, I was 28, and I had actually finally, after starting 3 companies, failed the first 2, got to a place where I was running a company, I was doing about 3 million in revenue, and like finally had gotten successful. But what I didn't realize was, even though I was very productive, I was a horrible person to be around. Like, I was working 100 hours a week. I was engaged to a woman, and like, she was just such an angel, but absolutely wasn't present. I mean, my buddies would have birthday parties and I would show up my laptop and sit there. And I actually thought like I was a good friend because I was so busy that I at least showed up. And I remember my friend Nick was like, "Why did you even come?" And I'm like, "Dude, at least I was here." And I'm like sitting on my laptop in his living room. And eventually one day I come home and my fiance drops the ring on the counter and says, "I'm done. I can't do this anymore." And walks out. And 7 weeks before our wedding, and about 3 months before I exited that company. So I had a reality, I had a shock of like understanding that even though I thought I was successful with my time, I wasn't living a high quality of life. And I had to come up with a different kind of approach to it. Cause, like David, and I'm sure Blaine yourself, like, I'm not going to stop building. Like, I'm a creator. I love to drive forward. I want to produce, but I wanted to do it in a way that, because like there was a 6-month period where I actually asked myself if I was ever going to be in a relationship. Like I thought maybe that was just my destiny. Like I just didn't know another gear. And I went on a journey. I moved to San Francisco from Canada, and I met some mentors. I met guys like Naval Ravikant, who's built Angel List and many other successful prior. And he explained to me the concept of leverage. He called them he didn't call them the 4 C's. My buddy Alex Hermosi called them the 4 C's, but it's content, code, capital, and collaboration. Right. And David, I know your background better, but you're like world class at these things, and especially collaboration. And I just changed the way that I thought of my calendar, about the energy I bring to my work, the way I look at my day and like structure things. And it turned into becoming the foundation of, how I've been able to scale and exit the companies that I've built, to how I coach now. I run the largest coaching organization for software CEOs, and buy back your time. And the buyback principle is the cornerstone of everything I teach, because if I can't get my CEOs more time to execute on the growth playbooks, then they're always going to be stuck, and they're just not a good time trader. And that's why I wrote the book. It's just a personal desire to want to have a family. And today I have like 2 beautiful kids and a great marriage and all these fun things. But if I didn't go through that, I don't think I would ever discovered it.
Yeah. The idea of time and calendar. Calendar is so ubiquitous in the business world. And it's probably the most poorly utilized tool that I can, and the executives that I coach, it's kind of like their calendar runs them, at least initially when we start working. And that's, you got the cart before the horse here, and it's not going to run real well. When you say giddy up, something's going to get in the way. And how do you work with your CEOs, the ones that you coach, to get them to the point where they begin to appreciate the value of literally calendaring in a way that is generative, and not, in a way that is just, let's cram it as full as I can cram it, because it tells the world I'm important and I'm busy.
Yeah. So the first thing we do is I have this framework I teach called the buyback loop. And the whole idea is like, I think anybody that's producing and creating in the world, they'll get to some kind of capacity ceiling. I call it a pain line, where any thought of growing past that, I literally just got a text message from a client where he even admitted that if he grew his business, he would have to do more work. So he didn't take on initiatives, because the new initiative would require his calendar to explode. So he was like dragging I call it sabotaging. He was sabotaging his growth because of the way he structured his life. So step 1 with the buyback loop is to audit your calendar. And I use a time and energy audit. So we look at everything they're doing. We highlight in green everything that gives them energy, highlight in red anything that takes their energy. And then we use a simple dollar, like $1 sign or $4 sign system, to just quantify the value of paying somebody else to do that task. And I mean, if you do this over a 2-week period, most my CEOs, they'll be like, oh, there's this bucket of things that are red that are $1 or $2 sign activities that I can just get off of my plate. If you're the owner, it's a lot easier. If you're a team member, I still do this with my executives. And the point is to just like understand the value of your time, right? And in the book, I talk about the buyback rate, which is the dollar amount that, mathematically, like $10 million companies were not built off $10 tasks. Like, it's just impossible. It's like the math doesn't work out. So we teach people how to quantify their time, understand their buyback rate. The T in the audit transfer fail is to transfer it. And that's a big idea. Like, how do I transfer the work off of my plate in a way that I still feel in control, that produces the outcomes I want to achieve? And then the kicker, and I think this is where you guys have really mastered it, is how do we fill it back up with things that light us up and that adds to our life? And that's the part where a lot of people miss it, because most CEOs, if you actually gave them 2 extra days a week back in their life, they would just keep doing the same noisy stuff they're doing today, right? The reactive inbox processing, got a second meetings, whatever. I call it, living life by design, not by default. And I teach this framework around the fill side. And for me, I look at it like a success ladder. And on the left side of the ladder, it's skills, right? It's either, I use the word skills, but it's really strategies about life. Like, if this is where I want to go, what skills do I have a deficit in that I've got to invest in? Then on the right side of the ladder, it's beliefs. What are the world views, the beliefs I have about how the world works that have caused some kind of like stall or ceiling that I'm hitting? And then what are the character traits that I have that need to be developed, right? Because if you don't have a work ethic, but you might be super skilled. I mean, we all know people that are talented that don't have much success in life, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the way that I look at like the calendar is, take care of your energy, invest in a new set of skills or beliefs or traits to become the person who can deal with a higher level of output. Because at the end of the day, time is a constant. The leverage is collaboration, content, code, or capital. And that'll increase your skill around managing those four things is what allows you to have more output.
Mm-hmm. And Dan, I'm Blaine, we share, so much in common, and we use different vocabulary, vernacular, and concepts. And that's why I just love listening to you, because your explanation of my own practices and methodologies allows me to enhance what I do. But I'd love for you to talk about something which is the lenses that we study our calendar. And I call it studying, right? Paying attention and giving intention of what I do, say, think, feel, and believe in the same context of what you're talking, different symbols that are utilized in systems. But I'm so enthusiastic and inspired in Theos by what you're teaching people, because I know it works. To that end, there's a certain lens that we have to shift with executives, especially, and software executives, I would think is interesting. It's not hard to shift them to productivity lens, right? And understanding the bleed and feed, which is how I describe what you're talking about. It either bleeds you or feeds you. Why not have all the activities that feed you? And then you have accessibility, which is who do you want to be accessible and what do you want to access? So the who can I help and who can help me type of phenomenon, which you also use different vocabulary and vernacular for. But I'd love for you to talk about, to finish up, how important gratitude is. Because in the calendar, in the activity.
Yeah. So when I think of, that's why I call it energy management. I think that not only should we think about the work we do in regards to like how, like the headspace, right? Like for me, I like to use my afternoons to have conversations, because that's where I almost feel like my morning area is most creative for like creative output. And then I like to train at lunch because it resets my energy. And then in the afternoon, I'm on phone calls, coaching calls, partnerships, investment meetings, whatever.
Interviews.
And like interviews. But for me, the belief set is like part of the rhythm, right? We talked about this last time. We talked about the question that I ask myself dozens of times a day, which is, how can I appreciate even more God's grace and guidance in this moment? That question resets my focus, which brings a level of belief that I'm being guided, which I am, in God's grace, and like that everything's perfect, and that anything that I desire to create is the reason it even came into my psyche is because it's there for me to have. And to the degree, the way I think about it is, to the degree that I can believe at 100% of the time, those are the 2 meters of like the ability to create or manifest, right? It's like, do I believe? So you have to have clarity. Like, do I have a belief about what I'm trying to create? So I have clarity. And then can I hold that belief at 100% of my day? Because like we're all, reactive and fallible to like moments and like frustrations and whatever. But I think like that's when I look at my calendar, I'm trying to figure out, did I design it so that I can have those things to be true? And what are the rituals and the routines? What do I focus my attention? How do I use triggers in my day? How do I reset my my questions or whatever to keep me focused on the beliefs that are going to bring the energy. And then that shows up, as you guys know, into the activities. And when you have an energy behind the work, that'll literally have a 4x impact on your life. And it's not about actually doing the work. It's the energy the state you were in when you did the work that has the biggest impact.
Yeah. It's energy follows attention. We use our calendar to dial in our attention and
intention.
And intention. Yep. Absolutely. They go hand in hand. And holding that, and those of you that are listening, I mean, take a look at your calendar, just where did you spend your time today? Because it's just marching forward. You have no control of that march. The arrow of time just progresses unless we enter a quantum state and it's absolute zero, and then it'll slow down and it doesn't exist, but we're not there. So why even worry about it? Okay.
Break out the tequila and discuss the quantum nature of this, and we'll get off. But I got to compliment Dan because as an interviewer and someone who loves giving and receiving interviews, I love when I can pitch a softball up to someone and they just knock it right out of the city. And so thank you. I was hoping you'd pick up on that question, and you did. You knocked it out of the park, as you did all the questions, even the screwballs and sliders that we sent your way. The incredible Dan Martell, SaaSacademy.com, danmartell.com. Buy his first book, January, coming out. Great cover, by the way. It's going to wear well at the airports and hotel rooms for sure. Buy back your time. No better way to buy back your life, I'll tell you that. Thanks, Dan. We'll do more together. We'll pump this book up so everybody buys it. I rarely say this. There's very few books that I can guarantee a very quantitative ROI. I guarantee anyone that buys this book, you're making an investment. You're not buying a book. So thanks, Dan, for joining us.
Appreciate it, guys. Have an amazing day.
Have a happy holiday, brother. Thanks for joining us. Woo! We're 3 for 3 on the guests. I'll tell you that, talking about pitching and hitting out of the park. Blaine, what's your takeaway from these 3 phenomenal world-class guests that we were able to bring on?
We've got community right on the front end, relationship attention on the middle. It's kind of putting an Oreo cookie here together with the cream filling is that relationship. And then on the backside, we've got it bounded by, that front piece. But the idea of quantifying where I pay my attention. And he didn't use this word. Dan didn't use this word, but the idea of ontological design. I use my calendar to design me. My calendar is always designing me. So design the calendar so that it designs me in return. And then you put in there that soft filling of relationship and build it around community, and life works. It's the synchronicity and the bespoke nature of our guest structure this today, I think, worked out really well. There's a nice little flow here if you're really paying attention.
Oh yeah, and giving attention.
Well, that's why I am.
Well, you're such a benefit and a blessing to the show and to these people, because we bring out the best in our guests. And what really rang to me, and we had these 3 unbelievable guests, but they took traditional things. These are not new topics. Right. Okay, right? They're not new. Lawn care is not new. You said you were doing it when you were a kid. VC, venture capital, is not new. And of course, the study of time is definitely not new. But I love the way that all 3 of our guests made it their own. A lot of people won't give it attention and intention. They won't give it any effort. They wouldn't give it to make it better, to make lawn care services better, to make venture capital better. Right? All 3 had the same theme that, look, I'm not going to do it the way it's always been done before. There has to be a better way. And the better way is what these 3 people, and my takeaway is that let's all keep looking for the better way. There's a better position, a better situation, and a better way by finding the light, the love, and the lessons and making it our own. You don't have to go with the flow when it comes to listening to what other people and looking how they do it, that you have to do it that way. And good on all 3 of these people. Good on Blaine Bartlett, who taught me that I'd rather have people laugh at me, scoff at me, and make fun of me, because eventually they'll applaud me. And I applaud you and all three of our great guests. Blaine Bartlett, I want you to have the most amazing holiday weekend. We will touch base before the new year, of course.
Absolutely.
Learn.blainebartlett.com/LMM. He's starting a new mastermind for 2023. Make it a Christmas gift, a Hanukkah gift, a Kwanzaa gift. Make it a New Year's gift for yourself and others. Reach out to Blaine. There's no better investment you can make in yourself than investing in Blaine Bartlett. Thank you so much, my brother.
You bet, buddy.
Love you. Oh, Matt killed me, man. Sorry. I love you. Matt, he's not here to look at. Anyway, tomorrow's training's on miracles. And if you want more miracles in your life, you want to create miracles, give miracles, receive miracles, or witness miracles, which are extraordinary events, accomplishments in our lives, all you got to do is email me. You want a miracle? It's Miracle Meltzer time. David@dmeltzer.com. Join me at 7 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow for the miracle training. I'm going to teach you about miracles. Please join me. I've been doing these trainings for over 23 years. Over 80,000 people are registered for tomorrow's training, and you can be part of it. David@dmeltzer.com. On every platform, David@dmeltzer.com. Email me, register. It's free. If it's free, it's we. So email me, David@dmeltzer.com. Have a happy holiday, everyone that doesn't come to training tomorrow at 7 a.m. Pacific time. Have a wonderful holiday, but most importantly, throughout the days, be more interested than interesting. Be kind to your future self and do good deeds. We'll see you tomorrow training. Happy holidays.